Thank you all for joining us here tonight for the presentations resulting from our inaugural Resilience Bootcamp, where we've been applying the entrepreneurial mindset to some of the complex problems that are confronting the Danville and Boyle County community. And we've done this with students, many of whom are not or were not previously familiar with that community. So it's been both an introduction to the entrepreneurial mindset and the design thinking principles that CentreWorks is advancing. And also, I think for many of these students, kind of their first real introduction to this community that they'll be calling home for the next 4 years. So we really appreciate our guests joining us as we talk through the process that these students have gone through over the last couple of days as they've been applying, as I said, design thinking skills to some of the more complex problems confronting our community. I know that we have two very distinguished guests with us today who I would like to introduce. We have the 21st president of Center College, Dr. Milton Moreland. And listing his full credentials, his CV, his accomplishments would take far too long. That would be a presentation in and of itself. But I do want to highlight the fact that Dr. Moreland, President Moreland, has experience with a very similar type of project at his prior institution known as the Memphis Center. So we're thrilled to have him on board, newly onboarded, and we're thrilled to kind of gain from his experiences and his perspectives on that. And then in addition, we have Dean Ellen Goldie, who has been a champion of this project almost since she joined us last year. I know that she is an early driver without which this project would not be nearly as advanced as it is. Without Ellen's leadership, we wouldn't be here tonight talking about our first entrepreneurial boot camp with these first year students. Her assistance and leadership has really been vital to getting this off the ground, even before we have a physical space. So I do want to let them introduce themselves a little bit if they want to say a few words. I know that we're really excited to have them here. Perhaps President Moreland, would you like to say a word?
Thank you much, Andrew. And good to see everybody again this evening, and good to see some welcome guests as well joining us along with our students and mentors here. It's fantastic to know that this is going on. It's kind of been in the back of my mind the last few days as I've been kind of thinking, what's going on around the world? I'm so happy that this has been going on. I'm a fan of problem solving. I am. That's why we're here. That's why you work at a college or a university, is because you're curious. You want to solve problems. You want to be with people who are curious and want to solve problems. And what better place to do that than right here at Center College? Next week at opening convocation, I'm going to talk about the inevitability of problems, but that they are soluble and that we are a part of the solution. And right now, during a pandemic, there's no better time to be thinking about the fact that problems are inevitable, but we can solve them. And let's just keep working together, building knowledge. And I love your spirit. I love what you're doing. And happy to see all the work that's been going on here. And of course, look forward to the next years together as we continue in this process. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, President Moreland. Dean Goldie, do you care to say?
Just real quickly, I'm thinking that y'all might be kind of tired at this point. It sounds like you've been working extremely hard. I'm excited to see and hear what you've come up with in this short period of time. I'm going to keep myself muted for the most part because I'm outside and there's cars going by and sirens and things like that. But I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've been able to come up with. And I realize that you can't solve every aspect of these really big problems in 3 days. But I know that with your combined creativity and passion and a lot of good mentoring that you're getting from peers, from your student mentors, from the Margitas, from Dr. Patrick, and from your community member, I think that it's a remarkable model, and I'm kind of jealous. I never got to do anything like this as a student, and I'm excited for you. All right, enough from me. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Dean Goldie. I feel as though both of your brief comments really reflect my feelings as well. This has been a new experience for me, and I've been delighted to be with the Margitas as we are working through this design thinking process with students, which I was not previously very familiar with. And I think that it's nice as well in that it's a demonstration of the principles that CentreWorks is intended to embody. So this same design thinking process that you're going to hear these student groups talk about is really the process by which we're designing CentreWorks, and we're revising that design, on a day-to-day basis. So if it's not too much, and I'm not putting words in the Margita's mouth, I think of this in some ways as one of our prototypes, right? We're trying this out, we're testing it out with end users, as you'll hear the students talk about. They are our end users, as are the community members that we've been working with and serving as well. So I think that it's a really nice encapsulation of kind of the spirit of CentreWorks too. And that's kind of a long-winded introduction to our co-directors, Andrea and Anthony Margita, and I'll let them say a few words themselves.
Well, thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. Tonight, you get just a glimpse of what can happen when students decide to spend the summer before college working together to understand and appreciate the entrepreneurial mindset and all that entails. The journey for these incoming students and our 4 amazing Center College interns and the first members of the CentreWorks R-Corps began in June with our inaugural Resilience Bootcamp Zoom session. And we just kept going. Throughout continuous sessions, they all learned about the attributes of the entrepreneurial mindset, how to put that mindset into action, and they gained an appreciation for the benefit of collaborating as a community to address complex challenges. They met with successful entrepreneurs, they connected with community members, they immersed themselves in building relationships with their new community. They connected with fellow students to solve problems, and in doing so, they've already built some strong relationships and a vibrant, close-knit community. They've learned about the history of the region, taken a virtual tour of beautiful downtown Danville. And they learned that, like all communities, Danville faces its share of community challenges. The program has been broad and it's been rigorous, and these incoming college students stuck with it. 3 specific challenges were brought forward by 3 dedicated community champions. And for the past 3 days, working in teams which include a community champion, interns, and a CentreWorks facilitator, these amazing students have immersed themselves in understanding that challenge, gaining perspective from residents through countless conversations, and then collaborating to develop a possible path forward. Throughout the process, they have exhibited empathy, unparalleled energy and enthusiasm, creativity, tenacity, teamwork, grit, and kindness. And although they never have even met each other in person, they have bonded over this shared mission. They've been flexible and understanding when a team member would leave for an appointment, go for another COVID test, or drive to Center College and move in. They've developed a deep connection to this community that they will soon call home, and all of that's happened before they even arrived. They haven't let anything stop them, not power outages, technology glitches, and yeah, that's plural. There were plenty of those. And even a pandemic couldn't stop these students. That's what we call resilience.
What you're about to observe is the product of a process called speed design. What it is that it's a crowdsourcing of diverse ideas coming from a number of perspectives, coming together to solve complex problems. I mean, what else could you call something where 23 incoming center students who have rarely, if ever, stepped foot in Danville are teaming with some of the most seasoned community champions and networking with community leaders to take on challenges that are some of the most formidable of Central Kentucky. So so we put students on the clock for this, to rush through 3 days to come together to formulate some ideas and put them to the test. They've had 58 hours from start to finish to listen, to learn, to act, and resolve. It's a process that's meant to create some stress, induce some pressure. An environment of urgency persists, and it forces people to act quickly. And it's also a process that surprisingly has led to some amazing results in its usage. And also surprisingly, maybe people seem to have a lot of fun along the way in doing it. So what they went through is, as we refer to, a design thinking process that was somewhat accelerated. On Monday morning, they started with step 1, which is empathize. They listened to 3 community leaders to hear about the challenges. And then they jumped into things in the afternoon by step 2, defining the problem statement, something around which they could measure the value of their solutions and how they could measure success. Then, once they defined the problem statement, they went to ideate. They brainstormed dozens of potential solutions and then built their prototype or initial solution, if you will, by distilling those ideas into something that could coalesce into their solution. But it didn't stop there. On Tuesday, they spent the entire day testing those ideas by talking to community members, dozens of them, those who work in the trenches, those who are intimately familiar with the challenges that they are attempting to address. And from that feedback and from what they learned by those conversations, they put that new learning into use on Wednesday morning when they jumped back into the design thinking process, created new ideas, built on their solutions, modified them, and optimized them to a point where they're ready to present some recommendations for you here tonight and tell their stories.
So 3 challenges, 3 teams, 3 intense days. It's time to sit back and enjoy listening to them tell you about their journey. Our first challenge, brought to you by community champion Dr. Richard Trollinger, is Reimagining nonprofit funding. So take it away, team. You're on.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Like the Margitas mentioned, we are in the Reimagining Nonprofit Funding, specifically targeting the Heart of United Way, the Heart of Kentucky United Way. And so a little bit about the United Way is that it's a nonprofit based out of Danville, Kentucky, and it helps fundraise for different local nonprofits in 4 different counties. And this is because oftentimes different nonprofits don't often get the fundraising they need and are having trouble finding a way to fundraise. So United Way really helps them out in that sense. And as part of the team, we have myself, Roxana Popa, Taylor Kennedy, Zane Schneider, Gracie Falk, Kyle Hankins, Sarah Kirtland, and Ian Sexton. The Margitas kind of hit on this, but a little bit about the design thinking process. There's 5 steps that you often have to go back and rethink, especially on the first step, empathize. So it goes empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. And as you'll see throughout our slideshow, you saw that we went back to empathize quite a few times and had to rethink a few things.
Hi everyone, my name is Ian Sexton. As noted above, step one to the design thinking process is to empathize. And this is really important. We had to listen and learn from the Danville community and from the Heart of Kentucky United Way in order to come up with a solution to their problem. We had the pleasure of listening and working with Dr. Richard Trollinger throughout this entire process. And when we were first introduced to the Heart of Kentucky United Way, we focused on what was being said rather than directly trying to come up with a solution then and there. We had to identify the problems and things like that, but before we could do any of that, we had to listen to what they wanted. It allowed us to absorb as much information as possible and then regroup and talk about what we heard after that.
So the next step of our process was focused on defining what the problems really were at this branch of United Way. So after we heard everything in the empathizing stage, we were able to narrow it down to sort of 4 areas that we really saw places we could improve on, or places that we might be able to help in our short 3 days. And so the first of those was looking at increasing the numbers of new donors while also increasing the retention rates of those donors. So that's sort of the basis for increasing fundraising money. And so we really focused there. And then from there, we were able to find out 3 other branches that would help us achieve that goal. So the second of those was to create awareness in the community about Heart of Kentucky United Way. In our phone calls, we noticed that while a lot of people were aware of what Heart of Kentucky United Way was, there was some people just weren't quite up to date with what it was and what it was doing in the environment, especially during coronavirus. And so we wanted to make sure that people knew what was happening and that change was still being made in the Danville community. So in addition to that, we wanted to create an easier and more accessible donation method. Prior to us coming in, we noticed that a lot of the fundraising money was based off methods that were maybe not consistent with the sort of digital world that we live in now. And so we wanted to incorporate some aspects of social media and then update their website as well. And then finally, we wanted to convey the value that Heart of Kentucky United Way has to the community, because that's what's really going to get people to donate to it. And we're really focused on showing people how Heart of Kentucky United Way is benefiting their community directly, as you'll see later in the presentation. So with that being said, we were able to break that down into a problem statement that narrowed down our focus and really allowed us to see what we were going to be doing for our time. And so what we came up with was that we were planning to design a model for the Heart of Kentucky United Way to increase new donors and also increase retention rates through spreading awareness, creating an easier donation process, and then also really conveying the value of the organization to the surrounding community.
All right, hi guys, I'm Taylor, and the next step of the design thinking process was ideate. This is where we started to brainstorm possible solutions for our challenge that was given. So at first, when we were thinking of the solutions, we could think of some pretty quickly. We were like, okay, we can just go to their house, bring them a gift, go out to dinner with them. And then we thought, oh wait, we forgot about this whole pandemic going on. So then that's where it became very challenging, and we really had to put our thinking caps on. So the first thing we kind of thought of after that was, well, social media. Everyone can still go on it. We did notice they had a Facebook page, but we definitely thought it'd be a good idea if they updated something like Instagram or Twitter as well. The next thing was partnering with different restaurants or local businesses. Right here, we could really get the United Way's value put out there. The other part was share how United Way makes a difference. This ties along with it, but we really were thinking of having the nonprofits really highlighted here and really showing different stories about them and how people benefit from them. And the next was having the center college students in the community more involved. So in this way, a lot of the students could either volunteer to help with the infographics or newsletters or different flyers that we would like to be sent out at local businesses or within the community.
Hi, I'm Gracie Falk. So the next part is to prototype, and this is when we think resiliently about solutions and create solution set of feasible ideas. And one of the ways is a monthly newsletter. So this newsletter will be shared via email, Facebook, other social media platforms, and website, and it will also be printed out as a poster in the library and throughout public areas like restaurants and stores. It'll have a donor and nonprofit of the month, so people can learn why certain people donated and about what the nonprofit does, and kind of learn more in depth about the nonprofit and where their money is going. And the nonprofit could have a Q&A, a tour, etc. It could be in Zoom or in person, COVID permitting. It'll feature data on progression of nonprofits from the past month. The newsletter will have QR codes and instructions to donate to make donating easier, and centered, created the help of center interns. So this is a sample newsletter that I created. So it kind of has the donor of the month and her description of why she wanted to donate it, and one of the programs, not United Way funds, Center Latino, and a little description about Center Latino and what they do and their website as well. This is also a mailbox flyer we would put in mailboxes to attract new donors. And I'll have the instructions on how to donate, and this is what it would look like. This is what the instructions and QR code would look like as well. And like Sarah talked about earlier, this will be social media expansion, expand on this new social media platforms like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, giveaways that require small donations to enter, like $5 or so. So we can reward people who give to Heart of Kentucky United Way, and also make people excited to give. And also Heart of Kentucky United Way has 3 amazing staff members, but they're very overworked. So they don't have time to make a newsletter or have their social media platforms. So they're going hopefully have a center college intern and make it an internship, and they'll write the newsletter each month and work on the social media platforms.
Yep. So the next part of our business plan or our proposal was to engage with local businesses, and we separated this into 2 separate parts. The first is that we want to use local businesses as a means to collect donations. So one solution was to ask customers if they would like to round up on their change. If they would like to round up their change and give the extra money to the United Way. The other solution, wait a minute, my thing has, wait a minute, I'm having technical difficulties.
Kyle, we can see your slides, so it's okay.
Okay. I cannot, I guess it might just be that I can't see the slides.
Okay. Do you want to keep going? You were doing the engaging local businesses?
Yeah.
You did a great job.
And so the other solution that we had was to put a donation box next to the local business. Was to put a donation box was to have a donation box there at the business so people could come in and potentially make a donation. And then as far as using businesses as a means to get our message out there, we were thinking that we could put flyers or we could put posters up in the business, and potentially people would look at those and they would think, oh, I can now donate, and then we'd have the box there for the donation.
And for the final step of the design thinking, we have the testing stage. Thanks to Dr. Trollinger, we were able to call 42 different community members. However, during the process, we found ourselves going back to stage 1 of the design thinking, which is empathy, because we were only able to talk to 19 of those 42 different community members since they're so busy. During these calls, we explained the challenge and our proposed solutions. We encourage all types of feedback in order to refine our solutions and create a more feasible set of solutions. After talking to the community members and receiving feedback, we as a team decided to eliminate some ideas that we came up with. So the first one that we decided to eliminate was the idea of percentage fundraiser nights at restaurants, just because restaurants are not doing too well right now during the pandemic. And then another one that we were going to take away was the envelopes attached to the flyers that we put in the mailboxes, because we figured that the return on investment would not be too high there. However, we're going to be adding videos to the newsletter and social media pages about the nonprofit of the month, or video testimonials about someone who's been impacted by the nonprofit. And finally, we'd like to have a huge shout out to our team leaders, and Andrea, Margita, and Dr. Trollinger. Additionally, we'd like to thank our CentreWorks interns, Lyric, Mary, and Clarence. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, team. And now we have a minute to hear a few words from the community champion who brought us this challenge, Dr. Richard Trollinger.
Thank you, Andrea. This is a great team, and working with them has been a pleasure, a joy for me. I've been amazed by how quickly they grasped the issues involved in the challenge I presented and the quality of the solutions they have proposed. Displaying a great deal of empathy, team members have taken to heart the challenge of more effectively engaging members of the community in order to raise funds for Heart of Kentucky United Way, so that the 32 nonprofit agencies Heart of Kentucky supports through its annual campaign will have more funds to devote to the good work they do with many of the most vulnerable members of our community. The proposed solutions focus on letting more people know about the good that Heart of Kentucky achieves and the lives that are touched by the funding it provides. I am confident this will encourage more people to become donors and current donors to make it a priority to continue giving. The solution also addresses ease of giving, which is an important factor in fundraising success. While support of United Way, both locally and nationally, has been declining for the past 20 years, the coronavirus pandemic has made it all the more urgent that we reverse that trend. Many of the people served by the 32 agencies that receive Heart of Kentucky United Way funding have lost jobs and their families are under growing stress. I was especially pleased that members of the team engaged in 19 telephone conversations yesterday with members of the community. Those conversations not only helped the team refine its solutions, but they also underscored the importance of the work being done by Heart of Kentucky United Way. I will definitely be looking for ways to share the team's work with members of the Heart of Kentucky United Way staff, its board of directors, and especially its campaign committee, of which I'm also a member. In fact, one member of our board has already expressed a desire to have the team attend a board of directors meeting and present its work. I don't think he told the person he talked with yesterday, though, that the board of directors usually meets at 7:30 in the morning. But in any event, thank you, team, for your good work and for allowing me to be a part of the Resilience Bootcamp.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks for your time in assisting us with resilience and taking the leadership role in this challenge. So thanks very much. Let's go right to our second challenge now that was brought to us by community champion Crystal McPherson, and the subject matter here is transitional housing. So team, take it away.
Okay. All right. So our group did transitional housing in Danville, Kentucky. I'm Bo Bush from Louisville, Kentucky.
I'm Yunus Moga. I live in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm Joe Higgins. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama.
I'm John Graham from Winchester, Kentucky.
I'm Sarah Feropoulos. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
I'm Aiden Thomas. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
Gloria Lynn. I'm from Owensboro, Kentucky.
I'm Ayana Ogg from E-Town, Kentucky.
My name is Adonis Logan. I'm a junior at Center College, and I'm serving my first rotation as an Art Corps intern with CentreWorks, and I was a facilitator for the group.
I think most folks know me, but I was the CentreWorks facilitator for this. I'm the associate director of CentreWorks and an assistant professor of history at Center College.
So our community champion was Crystal McPherson. She is with the Family Services Association. She's an executive director. She works with the Danville community. Like, she is very important to the community. She makes sure everything goes smoothly. And she works with clients who believe in the tyranny of the moment, because her clients are people who struggle typically.
So when we first heard about our problem, we all had some initial thoughts. So first, we were wondering what the difference was between transitional housing and homeless shelters. Second, although we didn't know the difference, we knew that it provided housing for people in poverty. And lastly, we wondered if it was for recovering adults or others. Throughout our 3-day process, we used a design thinking process, and these are the 5 steps. So step 1 is empathize. And in this step, we had to come up with challenges and other insights about transitional housing. The challenges were that there's no homeless shelter in Danville. Another challenge is that this issue affects all demographics in the community. Also, the root causes of this issue were prevalent because they are very common in Danville. And lastly, we found out there's a lack of education about what it is. But transitional housing is just housing that people in poverty can stay at for a few months. And some of the other insights that we found out were that it's a very big issue in Danville and that they need more transitional housing. And we were wondering why there wasn't any solutions yet.
So when we were coming up with our problem statement, we had to be sure that it was broad enough to allow for creativity, but narrow enough to be manageable. And so we each took what we thought were the strongest points from our empathize section and created our own statements. And then we took the strongest statements and kind of combined them into one that expressed our main goal while addressing the other problems that we would face like down the road in the future. And then after talking with the Margitas yesterday, we realized that our initial statement aimed to solve more problems than our solutions offered to fix. And so we narrowed it down even further so that it encompassed just our primary topic and the issues directly surrounding it. And so once we did that, we landed with this problem statement, which is educating the Danville and Center communities on the benefits of transitional housing through grassroots connections, K-12 schooling, and communication with the older population is essential to successfully establishing transitional housing in Danville.
Next, we go to the ideate step. The ideate step is where we came up with ideas. So we came up with these ideas by having small discussion groups. And the key ideas that we took away from this is that it's very important for the community to revolve itself around the importance of transitional housing. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that people are educated about the issue, because otherwise they won't understand what it is about. So in order to be able to do that, you also have to get government involved, particularly local and state government. And the most important thing is that there has to be access, because without proper location, you can't do transitional housing in an effective manner.
So after we came up with these brainstorm ideas, we were able to collaborate through Zoom and Google Docs, and we came to a general consensus for what we wanted our prototype to be. But since design thinking is not a linear process, as you may have learned, we were able to refine and revisit our prototype multiple times after listening to the critique from our interviews, and that proved very helpful in creating our end product. So for the test portion, we were able to have interviews with representatives of these organizations. For the Bluegrass Community Action Network, we met with Ms. Kim Velasco, and she really emphasized how there was a lack of understanding and education on what transitional housing is in the Danville community. For Boyle County Cooperative, we met with Ms. Alethea Price, and she put an emphasis on education in transitional housing as she teaches life skill classes there. For the Danville Housing Authority, we met with Ms. Gwen Campbell, and she put an emphasis on the lack of affordable housing in Danville. For Central Latino, we met again with Ms. Kim Velasco, and she brought our prototype insight in how we needed to reach out to the Latino community as well and make it more accessible. For the Salvation Army, Ms. Vicki Lofton told us how they were trying to implement something with the Super 8 hotel where they could house people, but it was a very temporary situation, so we tried to make our prototype more long-lasting. And for the Family Services Association, we had Ms. Crystal McPherson, and she was very helpful in providing us that we were going down the right path. And she also emphasized how we should go down a more digital accessible road for our prototype. So the common statements we had was a need for community involvement and understanding, a need for education on transition housing, and we had a prototype be digitally accessible.
So when we were actually like coming up with our prototypes, we wanted to find ways to get our information out to as many people as possible. And we were doing that through like specifically focusing on the different age groups. And so with the grassroots education, pamphlets, and word of mouth, we figured that this would be the best way to get word around to the older audiences, and especially organizations such as like churches or city commissioners that could be stakeholders and even like promotional figures for our cause. And then with the videos and the social media campaigns, we figured that this would be the best way to reach the younger audiences, which is really, really crucial for this cause because there's such a high rate of homelessness among the high school age students in Danville.
So the pamphlets are a component of Prototype 1 as well as grassroots education, which basically means we're trying to deliver all this information in a very personal and accessible way. We also need to make sure that these pamphlets are available digitally. And the reason for this is twofold. First of all, we would be able to tap into our younger audience. And also this was a result of feedback from the community during this unprecedented era of COVID. So we wanted to make sure that we had a reliable way to get information to everyone who needed it. And we wanted to make sure we got that information in a safe way. We also need to make sure these pamphlets are printed in English and Spanish. When we spoke to Ms. Kim Velasco with Central Latino, she made us realize how large of a community of Hispanics and Latinos are present in Danville, and we don't want there to be any language barriers with these pamphlets and these resources, and so we need to make sure that they're printed in both English and Spanish to mitigate that. Finally, we need to distribute these pamphlets to stakeholders as well as influencers, so like churches, local officials, commissioners, as well as the fiscal court. Basically, anyone who has a prominent voice that would be able to mobilize the community into action.
So taking a deeper dive into the content of the pamphlet will explain all that we've learned about transitional housing and how it affects Danville as a whole, not just people who are in need of transitional housing. So the pamphlet will also show the effects of transitional housing in other towns through statistics, such as the statistics from the Scholar House, which is a very successful transitional housing project that takes place in the area around Louisville. So some of the statistics from the Scholar House are that 81% of the students who exit the Scholar House exit to stable employment. 65% of the student parents who pursue who participate in the Scholar House activities pursue additional education, and 92% of all college credit hours attended by Scholar House graduates are completed. So we also want to include testimony from individuals who participated in transitional housing programs and have them tell us how it's positively impacted their lives. but we also plan to include a plan to educate the public on how they can become more involved in creating change in their community to establish transitional housing in Danville. And finally, we want to include contact information for local and state officials in order to get more attention for the idea of transitional housing in Danville.
So with our videos and social media campaign, we wanted to target high school students specifically. As Joe stated earlier, a large portion of the homeless population in Danville are young adults. And we did want to make these videos to show those resources that they could have access to through transitional housing, but also make people aware that their peers are suffering with housing insecurity. So when we were creating the storyboards for our video, we wanted the content to be engaging. So we were looking at statistics of housing in Boyle County, as well as in Kentucky in general. And we wanted to educate these young adults about homeless shelters versus transitional housing, and using the Scholar House, which has been really, really impactful in a very positive way in the Louisville area to kind of give that concrete structure of what a good transitional house looks like. And then also including testimonies again from people who have participated in transitional housing. And we feel like all of these elements would give a tone of compassion and empathy that can really open the eyes of the young adults in the community to what is going on. And then also hopefully inspire them to speak up more with local officials and be a part of that conversation moving forward to have transitional housing in Danville.
Center is part of the solution because students can research about the topic and attend town hall meetings to advocate for the building of transitional housing. Center students who are interested in becoming teachers could earn credit by providing their services, such as teaching life skills. We thought of having CentreWorks coordinate collaboration between many organizations such as Danville Housing Authority, Family Services Association, Bluegrass Community Action Network, the Salvation Army, and local faith communities to gain momentum to address the problem. We discussed this possibility as a potential prototype before we decided to focus on educating the public and on the stakeholders. So bringing back the statement from Ms. Crystal McPherson from the recording that we have seen, money can be found, but we just need the people to be on board. So if the major obstacle would diminish, we would gain community support to build transitional housing, and we wouldn't have to justify why we needed transitional housing. And it will be easier to solve the rest of the underlying issues of homelessness after everyone is educated about the topic and completely supportive of transitional housing.
And since our community champion was unable to join us tonight because she is busy planning for the counseling resources that will be available to center students, faculty, and staff in this unprecedented upheaval, I just want to say on her behalf that she really appreciates the effort that you've put into this. She wishes she could have been more engaged, but she's been quite busy. So you've had to deal with me as a stand-in in other circumstances than this as well. But I really admire the determination with which this group attacked this very complex problem. And I really think that it was remarkable the way in which they were able to break off a manageable piece and shrink this complex, multifaceted issue into digestible, achievable portions. And I really think that they hit on something valuable there in thinking through the implications of educating the public, in particular stakeholders who have some sway in this decision-making process, as a key variable after which the rest of the complex puzzle can be more easily solved. So I really appreciate their effort. I think we should spend as much time as possible hearing from the students though, so I'm gonna, again, be quiet.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Appreciate your time and leadership with that team. And Andre and I know we appreciated Crystal's input on this team and hearing her story and putting together the challenge on Monday morning. So we'll be sure to send along our thanks to her. So now let's go on to our third and final group. It's a challenge brought to us by Jeff Jewell, who is the executive director of the Danville Boyle County Chamber of Commerce. And the subject matter is food deserts. So food desert team, take it away, it's all yours.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and introduce this for you guys. So we are the Food Desert team, and we worked with Jeff Jules to solve, sorry, can you go to the next slide? I'm sorry. So this is our team. We have Anya Hartman, Griffin Bateson, sorry, John Bingaman, and Hal Taylor. And then Carly West, I'm Natalie Middleton, Lucy Basehart, and Elizabeth Briles. And then John, do you wanna?
Yes, so these were our kind of leaders. Jeff Jewell was our community champion from the Danville Boyle County Chamber of Commerce. Of course, we had Mr. Margita, Anthony Margita, who was our CentreWorks facilitator, and then our lovely ArcCorps intern leader, Phoenix Staton.
All right, so I'm Anya Hartman, and I'm here to talk about some of the food insecurity and explain what it is. So food insecurity is the disruption of food intake or eating patterns due to poverty. And this concept is super frequently associated with food deserts, which are basically urban areas that lack affordable and fresh, healthy food. And our community champion, Jeff Jewell, introduced our team to some of the issues that Danville had about the growing food desert and food insecurity problems. And as we continue to educate ourselves on the topic, we learned that during COVID-19, there's been this 118% spike in people who are now food insecure in Kentucky, and a lot of people's grocery bills have gone up as well.
Yeah, so after we had, we really got to listen to Jeff and really work on empathizing and really trying to understand the issue that was, going on in a community that we are about to join. So after we had done that, we really kind of all sat down and began to define what we felt like the problem was. We all kind of defined our own problem statement, and then we came together and defined a collective problem statement that we really felt like summarized the kind of root problem of what was going on in Danville. After that, we really kind of got to get creative with our ideate phase, and we really just thought of a ton of different solutions that we thought could work to be a solution to this issue. And after that, we kind of came together, we threw out all our ideas, we saw what stuck, and we worked to define a clear solution statement that we thought went with our problem statement.
John, go ahead. I think Anya's having trouble with her mic. Go ahead.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, that was me. Okay.
Okay.
So we looked at this and we decided, well, what are we going to do about this? So we all got our heads together and we looked at Danville's situation and decided that our goal was to provide fresh, healthy, year-round, sustainable, and affordable food to residents of Danville who are unable to find transportation to it. And so we brainstormed ways that we could address the problem, and we narrowed it down to a few starting ideas. So our original solution statement was that we wanted to create a co-op or community invested space that is dedicated to providing sustainable, fresh, accessible, and year-round resources to Boyle County residents. We would utilize a community garden, aquaponic system, and local vendors to ensure that those who need these resources would receive them. And our storefront space would run off of both volunteers and employees. We would possibly work in open hiring. And this is just the list of the 10 community champions that we spoke to over the phone. And like I said, we spoke to each community champion in pairs and presented our original problem and solution statement. And each champion provided us with insight on how to improve our solution and what challenges we might face. They offered we told them our solutions and they pointed out some flaws that we hadn't really thought of yet. And they also introduced new solutions that we hadn't thought of yet. And so some key takeaways were that they suggested that we could apply for grants. There's like a bunch of funds that are specific to co-ops that could back us and help us start us off. And it's also important that we educate the community on the food desert of Danville, because Danville is very like affluent and is a pretty town, so people aren't aware just how much of a pressing issue this is. And another idea was that we would have a community garden for fresh produce, because sometimes the local places with food struggle with their freshness. Another great idea that was brought towards us by our champions was a grab bag checkpoint or a pop-up produce stand. This allows the idea to be more accessible and create a welcoming area for the residents of Danville. So after like hashing through the ideas with our champions, we created a new problem statement to provide fresh, healthy, year-round, sustainable food to residents of Danville that is affordable and accessible.
And then our new solution statement ended up being a co-op community invested space that is dedicated to providing sustainable, fresh, accessible, and year-round resources to Danville residents. We will ensure that the goods we offer are healthy by relying on our community garden and local vendors. As we are looking to incorporate community into our model, we will utilize educational resources to help sustain healthy eating initiatives. We will provide seasonal crops to ensure that our produce is fresh and available year-round. Our model will be affordable and accessible for all community members by utilizing pop-up produce stands within various neighborhoods throughout Danville.
One of the things we're focusing on when we're opening up this co-op and pop-up stand is sustainability. The best way to keep the momentum of what we're trying to do going is to educate people on why we're doing it. And if we advertise the benefits of buying locally produced items, that will help counter the concept that healthy eating is expensive, because it can be inexpensive, it can be affordable, and it can be accessible. And by educating people on this, it is therefore sustainable. And we hope our co-op is community-led and community-supported. For example, agricultural representatives, church groups, school systems, or the college can help keep the momentum going and continue to bring people in.
So another one of the things that we wanted to focus on was making sure that our solution was healthy and provided healthy food. So one of the ways that we were planning on doing this was by having a community garden that would produce fresh fruits and vegetables. And then if we were unable to grow all of the crops for our co-op in the community garden, we would make sure that they were locally sourced by local farmers and vendors. And then we were going to make sure to provide nutritious food options at our co-op and pop-up stands.
So our another one of our focuses was to focus on year-round to make sure that everything was available in the winter and in times where plants would not be able to be grown. So we wanted to focus on meat and storage crops, root vegetables, tubers, etc. in the wintertime in order to ensure that our produce is fresh throughout the year, so that way the people of Danville are still able to get nutritious food. And then we also wanted to expand on the community garden to grow year-round food and perennials.
And to make all of this accessible to everyone, we intend to set up the pop-up stands in various neighborhoods around Danville. These stands will consist of selling the fresh and affordable foods previously mentioned and offering free grab bags to families in need.
Finally, we wanted to ensure that the pop-up stand was affordable. So as previously mentioned, we would provide free grab bags with fresh produce to families in need at various locations around Danville, and be sure to implement all possible forms of assistance for consumers, such as SNAP and the Senior Nutrition Program. We would also implement the Double Dollars program, which doubles SNAP benefits up to $20, with the first $12 for fruits and vegetables and the final $8 for meat and dairy products.
In conclusion, our groups really enjoyed the opportunity to meet with some community champions in Danville that are already tackling this problem. And we've also really enjoyed having the opportunity to better understand Danville. Our team really hopes to continue with CentreWorks and continue our involvement in solving the food desert crisis once we arrive on campus. But that being said, we're not going to be able to face this challenge by ourselves. Our next steps once we arrive on campus are going to start by spreading awareness in the town of Danville. So Danville is a very affluent, very pretty town, but that being said, that sometimes overshadows some of the challenges that they face. So starting off, we would definitely raise awareness around Danville and in Center itself. We also hope to continue networking with community champions so we can better understand these problems and dive deeper into the core causes of the issues. Also, so we can finally have a tangible solution, we need to begin fundraising both around Center and in the town of Danville. Community outreach through the CentreWorks program is also going to be very important for us because we need to be able to talk to those who are being affected by the food desert and really understand what they need. We also hope to encourage other students to get involved, and we would like to consult local farmers and grocers about what they can produce and to better understand our community garden.
So if you've watched this presentation and decided that this is a big issue in Danville right now, the good news is that there's a bunch of ways that you can help us help the community. And the first one is just to spread awareness, whether that's to other center students, to your family members, or to just Danville residents. You can also volunteer at organizations in Danville, including the Boyle County Farmers Market and area food banks. You can contact community leaders, such as the community champions that we mentioned earlier in the presentation. And finally, you can contact CentreWorks and stay involved with them by going to the website at centerworks.org.
All right, great job, team. Thanks so much for your efforts there with the food deserts. So we'd like to hear now on from our community champion on this, Jeff Jewell. Hey, Jeff, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'd like to say what a pleasure it's been working with our students.
Jeff's having.
I think I froze again for a minute. Am I back? Great.
Yeah, you're back. Oh, yeah.
Windy day in Green Acres. What can I say? It's been a great pleasure working with students on this project. We've learned a lot. I have some exciting news for our group in sharing some of our findings with some of my colleagues today.
He's going to leave us in suspense. Come on, Jeff.
I'm back.
Okay.
Some folks out in Perryville, including the director of Main Street Perryville, are real interested in our pop-up neighborhood grocery type stand idea. Perryville is a little town in the western part of the county, pretty as it can be. As we discussed in our food desert study, it is a little community surrounded by agricultural land without a single grocery store. They travel almost 15 miles to the nearest grocery. So they want to talk to us about ways they can start looking into doing this with us as a partner. So we already have an interested party that likes our work. And it was just a great pleasure working with everyone. And I must say, all of the community leaders from Bloomington Community Orchard to the Community Farmers Alliance people that we hooked the students up with all really, really enjoyed the conversations. I feel like we all learned a lot, and it was a very, very positive experience.
Okay.
Great job, guys.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much, Jeff. And Andre and I would like for everybody to unmute their mics for just a minute and give a round of applause to all our
amazing
students. All our students.
They are fantastic. Students did a phenomenal job. You worked so hard. It's truly impressive what you were able to accomplish. And boy, is Center College and Danville lucky to have you. I bet they cannot wait. So we wish you all the best. We're so grateful also for all the people who attended and helped make this happen.
Yes.
We don't have time for questions and answers. We apologize. But Andrew, people can email those. Is that the plan?
Yeah, sure. I don't want this to be a one-way street, so if this raised some questions for you, get in touch with me and then I can route them to the appropriate students and we can keep this dialogue going if anybody is interested in doing so. I always like to hear from students at the end of the presentations, but I do think it's always a good sign when they completely fill the hour that you have booked for them. They've clearly done a lot of hard work and learned a lot in the process. So I'm not particularly disheartened that we don't have time for the Q&A, but I'd love to continue the conversation.
And now our fabulous first R-Corps participants, Adonis and Phoenix, have our closing music and slide.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so
Thank you
for
so
coming.
much.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks again for being with us.
Thanks. Good night.